There is something your son has been carrying quietly for much longer than you realize. He may have smiled in front of you. He may have answered, "I'm fine," when you asked how he was doing. He may have continued with his responsibilities, gone to work, spoken normally, laughed at ordinary things, and acted as though everything was under control. But beneath that familiar face, there has been a story he has struggled to put into words. And now, something is changing. A tearful goodbye is near, not necessarily a goodbye forever, and not a prediction of death, but a deeply emotional moment of separation, transition, truth, or release. Something that has been held inside is moving toward the surface. Your son may soon reach a moment when pretending becomes harder than speaking honestly. That is why this message may feel unusually emotional. If you are a parent watching this and something inside you immediately made you think of your son, stay until the end. Do not rush away from this message simply because one sentence makes you uncomfortable. The purpose is not to frighten you. The purpose is to help you notice what may be hidden behind silence. Sometimes the people we love most do not tell us when they are struggling. Sometimes they protect us from their worries because they believe we already have enough to deal with. Sometimes a son becomes so accustomed to being strong that he forgets he is allowed to say, "I need you." And sometimes the person who appears the strongest in the family is secretly the one carrying the heaviest emotional weight. Your son may have been carrying something alone. Perhaps it is a decision he has been afraid to make. Perhaps it is a truth he has rehearsed in his mind hundreds of times but never found the courage to say aloud. Perhaps he is preparing to leave a familiar environment, begin a new chapter, move somewhere else, change his career, end a relationship, start a new one, or finally walk away from something that has been draining him. Maybe he has been thinking about his future while everyone around him assumes he is simply busy. Maybe he has been struggling with guilt. Guilt about not calling enough. Guilt about not visiting enough. Guilt about becoming independent. Guilt about things he said during an argument. Guilt about choosing himself. Or perhaps he carries the painful belief that his choices have disappointed you. And this is where the story becomes deeper. Because your son may not be avoiding you because he does not love you. He may be avoiding a conversation because he loves you too much. He may be afraid that if he tells you everything, you will worry. He may be afraid you will misunderstand. He may be afraid that once the words leave his mouth, nothing will ever feel the same again. So instead, he keeps quiet. He changes the subject. He says he is tired. He says he will explain later. He tells himself there will be another day. But another day keeps becoming another week. And another week becomes another month. Until one emotional moment forces everything into the open. That moment may be the goodbye this message is pointing toward. Imagine your son standing somewhere familiar, looking at the people he loves, knowing that life is about to change. Maybe he has packed a bag. Maybe he has made a decision. Maybe he has received an opportunity he never expected. Maybe he is leaving behind a place that once felt like home. He looks normal. But inside, memories are flooding through him. He remembers childhood. He remembers the little things you probably thought he had forgotten. The meals you prepared. The times you waited for him. The moments you defended him. The arguments. The celebrations. The days when he was sick and you stayed awake. The first time he walked. The first day of school. The first disappointment. The first time he tried to become independent. He remembers all of it. And suddenly, the ordinary things become precious. A familiar room does not look like a room anymore. It looks like a chapter of his life. A family photograph is no longer just a photograph. It becomes proof that time has been moving faster than anyone realized. And perhaps this is why his emotions have been strange lately. He may become quieter. He may spend more time alone. He may stare at his phone without calling anyone. He may start looking through old photographs. He may suddenly become interested in stories from childhood. He may ask questions that seem random. What was I like when I was little? Do you remember that old house? Do you remember the trip we took? Do you remember when we used to do this together? Those questions may not be random at all. Sometimes when people stand at the edge of a new chapter, they look backward before moving forward. They revisit the memories that made them who they are. And your son may be doing exactly that. But there is another possibility. Maybe the goodbye is not about him leaving physically. Maybe it is about the version of him that has been living under pressure finally coming to an end. Maybe the son you knew as someone who always needed approval is becoming a man who understands himself. Maybe he is finally releasing an old fear. Maybe he is walking away from a relationship that made him feel small. Maybe he is ending a friendship that secretly hurt him. Maybe he is leaving behind an identity that no longer fits. That kind of goodbye can be incredibly emotional. Because growth often requires saying goodbye to something familiar. And familiar does not always mean healthy. Your son may have been carrying a burden because he thought he had to handle everything by himself. He may have convinced himself that asking for help would make him weak. He may have watched people around him struggle and decided that he should never become another problem. So he learned to hide his pain. He learned to smile when he wanted to cry. He learned to say, "Nothing happened," when something was clearly bothering him. He learned to disappear into his room. He learned to stay busy. He learned to keep conversations short when emotions became too intense. And eventually, silence became his protection. But silence has a limit. There comes a moment when the heart becomes too full. When that happens, one conversation can release years of emotion. That conversation may begin with something incredibly simple. "I need to tell you something." Those 6 words can change the atmosphere of an entire room. Because parents know when their child is speaking differently. You can hear it in the voice. You can see it in the eyes. You notice the hesitation before the sentence. You notice the deep breath. You notice the way he looks away. And then he finally says what he has been carrying. Maybe he tells you that he is leaving. Maybe he tells you that he has accepted an opportunity far away. Maybe he tells you about a relationship he has kept private. Maybe he tells you about a mistake he made. Maybe he admits that he has not been happy. Maybe he tells you that he has been pretending to be okay. Maybe he tells you that he is tired of living according to everyone else's expectations. Or maybe he simply says something that sounds ordinary but carries years of emotion. "I just want you to understand me." That sentence can break open a parent's heart. Because sometimes children grow older without ever explaining how much they have been feeling. They assume their parents already know. Parents assume their children will eventually speak. And between those two assumptions, years can pass. That is why this message is not asking you to panic. It is asking you to pay attention. If your son has been distant, do not immediately assume he has stopped caring. Distance can sometimes be a sign of internal conflict. If he has been unusually quiet, do not automatically interpret it as disrespect. Silence can be exhaustion. If he seems distracted, do not instantly accuse him of ignoring the family. His mind may be somewhere else because he is trying to solve something he does not know how to explain. And if he suddenly becomes emotional, do not shame him for it. Let him feel. Let him speak. Let him finish his sentence. You do not always have to fix what he says. Sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give is simply listening without interruption. Your son may not need a lecture. He may not need 10 solutions. He may not even need you to agree with every decision. He may simply need to know that after telling you the truth, he will still be loved. That is the part he may be afraid of. He may wonder, what if they see me differently after this? What if they think I failed? What if they are disappointed? What if they tell me I made the wrong choice? These questions can keep someone silent for years. And perhaps he has been carrying exactly that fear. There is also something else you need to understand. Your son may be preparing for a goodbye because he is finally choosing his future. That can hurt. A parent can be proud and heartbroken at the same time. You can celebrate his new beginning while missing the version of him who used to be close every day. You can support his independence while secretly wishing time would slow down. You can be happy for him and still cry after he leaves. Those emotions do not contradict each other. They prove that love is complicated. The tearful goodbye may arrive when you least expect it. Perhaps one ordinary evening suddenly becomes unforgettable. You are sitting together. The conversation starts normally. Then something changes. He becomes quiet. You ask what is wrong. At first he says nothing. Then he takes a breath. And finally, the truth comes out. He may say, "I didn't know how to tell you." And those words may explain everything. Because the problem was never that he had nothing to say. The problem was that he had too much to say. He may reveal that he has been afraid of hurting you. He may admit that he has felt lost. He may tell you that he has been questioning his direction. He may explain why he made certain choices. He may confess that some of his recent behavior came from pressure he never shared. And suddenly, moments that once confused you begin to make sense. The late nights. The missed calls. The sudden mood changes. The unusual quietness. The need for privacy. The emotional reactions. The constant thinking. The hesitation. You may realize that he was not trying to push you away. He was trying to figure himself out. And perhaps he believed he had to do it alone. This is the moment where you have a choice. You can focus on what he did wrong. Or you can focus on what he has been trying to survive emotionally. You can immediately tell him what he should have done. Or you can first ask, "How long have you been carrying this?" That question may open a door. And once that door opens, he may finally tell you everything. There could be tears. There could be silence. There could be apologies. There could be a long hug after months of emotional distance. And there could be a goodbye. But remember what kind of goodbye this can be. It can be goodbye to fear. Goodbye to secrecy. Goodbye to resentment. Goodbye to an old chapter. Goodbye to the belief that he must carry everything alone. Maybe your son is not losing you. Maybe both of you are learning how to love each other differently. When children become adults, the relationship changes. The parent must learn to release control. The child must learn to communicate. Both sides can struggle. A parent may think, "Why doesn't he tell me anything anymore?" The son may think, "They won't understand if I tell them." And both can be hurting while both still love each other deeply. This is why the upcoming emotional moment matters. It may create an opportunity to rebuild communication. Your son may finally realize that he does not have to protect everyone from his truth. And you may realize that loving him does not mean controlling every decision he makes. It means giving him a safe place to return to. Even when you disagree. Even when his path looks different from the one you imagined. Even when his choices surprise you. There is immense power in saying, "I may not understand everything yet, but I am here." Those words can heal years of fear. They tell him that he does not have to perform strength around you. He can be vulnerable. He can admit mistakes. He can say he is confused. He can change his mind. He can grow. He can become someone different from the child you remember. And you can still love him. Perhaps this is the real reason the goodbye will be tearful. Because somewhere inside, both of you will realize that time has changed everything. The little boy who once needed you for everything now has his own dreams. The child who once held your hand may soon be walking into a future you cannot completely see. That can be painful. But it can also be beautiful. Your job is not to stop the future. Your job is to make sure he knows that wherever the future takes him, he has a home in your heart. There may come a moment when he turns around before leaving. Maybe he says very little. Maybe he simply looks at you. But that look says everything. It says, "I will miss you." It says, "Thank you." It says, "I'm scared." It says, "I'm trying." It says, "I love you." And perhaps you will finally understand why he was so emotional. Because saying goodbye is not always about wanting to leave. Sometimes it is about loving a place so much that leaving it hurts. Your son may carry that love with him. He may carry your voice. Your advice. Your sacrifices. Your habits. Your lessons. Even the things he once complained about may become memories he treasures later. He may remember the way you called his name. The way you worried about him. The way you waited for him. The way you celebrated small victories. He may not have appreciated all of it when he was younger. But distance has a strange way of teaching people what mattered. And perhaps he is beginning to understand that now. This is why you should not wait for a dramatic moment to tell him what he means to you. Tell him now. Tell him that he does not have to hide everything. Tell him that mistakes do not erase love. Tell him that independence does not mean abandonment. Tell him that he is allowed to build his own life. And most importantly, tell him that he never has to suffer silently just to protect you. If he needs help, let him ask. If he needs space, give him healthy space. If he needs to talk, listen. If he needs a hug, give him one. If he is leaving for a new chapter, bless the journey rather than making him feel guilty for growing. Because guilt can make a goodbye heavier than it needs to be. Love should make the goodbye emotional, not unbearable. There is a difference. Your son may be standing at a doorway between two lives. Behind him is everything familiar. Ahead of him is uncertainty. And between those two worlds stands his heart. He may feel excitement and fear simultaneously. He may wonder whether he is making the right decision. He may secretly wish someone would tell him that everything will work out. Maybe you cannot promise that everything will be easy. But you can promise that he does not have to face life without love. You can tell him. Go build your life. Go learn. Go become who you are meant to become. And whenever you need us, come home. Those words can stay with someone forever. Years later, he may remember them during a difficult night. He may remember them when he succeeds. He may remember them when he fails. He may remember them when he becomes a parent himself. And suddenly he will understand something he could not understand before. Parents are not only people who raise children. They are often the first place where a person learns what unconditional love feels like. So if your son has been carrying something alone, let this be your reminder. Do not force the truth out of him. Create an environment where truth feels safe. Ask gentle questions. Do not interrogate. Say his name. Look at him. Listen. And if he says, "I'm okay," but something tells you he is not, simply say, "You don't have to explain everything right now. But whenever you're ready, I'm here." That sentence leaves the door open. And sometimes that is all someone needs. The emotional goodbye may come sooner than expected. But it does not have to represent an ending. It may be a transition. A new beginning. A moment when your son finally steps into a new phase of his life while carrying the love of the family with him. The tears may fall because the chapter mattered. The hug may last longer because both of you understand that things will not be exactly the same afterward. But different does not mean worse. Different can mean growth. Different can mean healing. Different can mean maturity. Different can mean that the relationship is finally becoming honest. And perhaps, after the tears, there will be something unexpected. Relief. Your son may finally feel lighter because the secret is no longer trapped inside him. You may feel emotional because you finally understand what he has been carrying. And both of you may discover that the distance you feared was actually the beginning of a stronger connection. Sometimes people become closer after they stop pretending. So when that moment comes, do not be afraid of the tears. Let them come. Let your son cry. Let yourself cry. Do not rush to make the moment comfortable. Some moments are supposed to be felt. If he tells you he loves you, believe him. If he apologizes, hear him. If he says he is scared, reassure him. If he tells you he needs to leave, do not immediately translate his departure into rejection. A son can leave a house without leaving his family. A son can build a separate life without forgetting where he came from. A son can become independent without loving his parents any less. And sometimes the greatest act of love is allowing someone to go forward without making them feel guilty for moving forward. Your son has been carrying something alone. Maybe he carried it because he thought nobody would understand. Maybe he carried it because he wanted to protect you. Maybe he carried it because he was ashamed. Maybe he carried it because he was confused. Whatever the reason, the burden does not have to remain hidden forever. A conversation is coming. A decision may be revealed. A chapter may close. And yes, there may be tears. But do not look only at the goodbye. Look at what comes after it. Because after goodbye comes the next chapter. After fear comes courage. After silence comes honesty. After separation comes a different kind of connection. And after a child leaves one stage of life, they often discover who they truly are. Your son may be closer to that transformation than you realize. So if you have been feeling that something is different, do not automatically assume the worst. Instead, become more present. Notice him. Listen to him. Talk to him. Tell him you love him without asking for anything in return. Remind him that his future belongs to him, but he never has to face it without support. And if he eventually stands before you with tears in his eyes and tells you the truth he has been hiding, remember this message. The moment may feel like heartbreak. But it may actually be the moment the burden finally leaves his shoulders. Perhaps that is what you have been waiting for without knowing it. Not a perfect son. Not a son who never makes mistakes. Not a son who always agrees with you. But a son who feels safe enough to be honest. That is priceless. And when the goodbye finally happens, hold him a little longer. Not because you believe you are losing him. Hold him because you are proud of the person he is becoming. Tell him that wherever life takes him, love does not disappear with distance. Tell him that home is not just a physical place. It is the feeling of being accepted. It is knowing that someone remembers where you came from. It is knowing that someone will answer when you call. It is knowing that you can return without shame. Your son may be stepping away from one version of his life. But he does not have to step away from love. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this entire story is that he may finally realize that. He may finally understand that he was never truly alone. He only believed he had to carry everything alone. That belief can end. The silence can end. The fear can end. The old chapter can end. And the next one can begin. So when you see him, look beyond the surface. Look beyond the attitude. Look beyond the silence. There may be an entire emotional world underneath. Ask him how he really is. And then give him enough time to answer. Do not fill every silence. Sometimes the truth needs a little room to breathe. Maybe he will speak immediately. Maybe he will not. Maybe he will change the subject. That is okay. Try again another day. Love does not always need one dramatic conversation. Sometimes healing happens through many small conversations. A phone call. A meal together. A walk. A simple message. A hug before leaving. A sentence that says, "I'm proud of you." Those small moments can become the foundation for everything that follows. And if a tearful goodbye is indeed near, let it remind you of something important. Goodbyes are not always endings. Sometimes they are proof that something is changing. And change can be painful even when it is necessary. Your son is growing. His world is expanding. His responsibilities are increasing. His dreams may be taking him somewhere unexpected. But the love between a parent and child does not have to shrink because life expands. It can become deeper. More mature. More honest. More intentional. One day, you may look back at this emotional moment and realize that you were not watching your son disappear. You were watching him become himself. And perhaps that is why the tears will come. Because every parent eventually has to face the truth that children are not meant to remain children forever. They are meant to grow. They are meant to leave the familiar. They are meant to discover their own path. And sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is giving them the freedom to walk that path. So do not fear the goodbye. Prepare your heart for the conversation. Prepare your heart to listen. Prepare your heart to understand that your son may have a story you have never heard. And when he finally tells it, do not punish him for taking so long. Thank him for trusting you enough to finally speak. That may be the moment everything changes. Not because you suddenly solve every problem. Not because every fear disappears. But because he no longer has to carry the weight in silence. He will know that someone heard him. Someone understands. Someone cares. And someone will still be there when the tears dry. If this message made you think about your son, take it as a reminder to reach out, not from fear, but from love. Send him a message. Call him. Sit beside him. Ask him how life is really treating him. And if he says, "I'm fine," give him a little more space to be honest. Tell him. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to protect me from every problem. You can tell me the truth. And no matter what happens, you are loved. Those words may mean more than you realize. Because somewhere inside, your son may have been waiting to hear them. The goodbye may come. The tears may fall. The chapter may change. But love does not have to end. Sometimes the goodbye is simply the doorway into a new relationship between two people who finally understand each other. And when your son walks forward, let him carry one thing with him above everything else. The certainty that he was never alone. He was loved before he understood what love meant. He was supported even when he could not see it. And even when he takes a different road, there will always be a place where his name is spoken with love. That is the message behind the tears. That is the meaning behind the goodbye. And perhaps, when the moment finally arrives, you will both discover that what looked like an ending was actually the beginning of something much stronger. A new chapter. A deeper bond. A truth finally spoken. A burden finally released. And a son finally understanding that he never had to carry everything alone.